All right, it's time for public comments. Audrey Carlson, you're first.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Audrey Carlson, and I'm a student at Thunder Basin High School. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to researching equality. Equality has been a big part of my life, especially living in Wyoming, the equality state, which is why I'm here today. As you know, at school, well, some of you know, at school we have to take these tests that ask us how we feel and if we feel bullied. Now, I've been seeing adults in Wyoming who give us these tests are becoming somewhat of a bully because many of you may be wondering, what is she talking about? Well, the government gives us the tests, and the library board being appointed as appointed affiliation makes them part of the government. The government gives the schools the tests and you take them. But some of the library things going on is, well, sorry, I'm a little nervous.
You are sure. If you want to sit down, you can sit down.
Okay.
You don't have to sit
So,
Just take your time.
well, the library being part of the appointed affiliation makes them part of the government. The government gives the schools the tests and we take them. But, sorry, I'm calling a few people out. Sage Bear and Chelsea Gomer. I believe that you guys are on something called the Mass Resistance Group. I believe, which is a cyberbullying system because of some of the comments and posts that I've seen online and in newspapers. And I believe having an affiliation with the Mass Resistance and the bullying tactics of the Mass Resistance has kind of divided our community today. The Wyoming Mass Resistance Group has said that they are trying to protect children, but I have friends who feel they are unwelcomed and not safe to come to the library because of these discriminatory actions. So today I come not only with a little bit of criticism, but with a solution, which is in 2017, there was a bill passed in Wyoming. The bill was called Protection of Parental Rights, Wyoming State Statute 14.206A, saying the liberty of a parent to the care, custody, and control of their child was a fundamental right that resides first with the parents. So in my belief, I believe that my parents are the ones who can tell me what I can and cannot read, and I believe that it should stay that way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Lisa Malis.
I would like to take a moment during this season to thank all the employees and volunteers of Campbell County Library for their tireless work in serving the patrons and numerous county agencies and provided devoted service to all citizens of Campbell County. I'm wishing them a happy and joyous Christmas and Hanukkah season. I invite everyone now to stand up and show your appreciation and applause.
Gail Cruz.
My name is Gail Cruz, and I would like to agree with Miss Carlson. I think when she said that parents should have the right to control what their children read, I think that's excellent, and I think most of us can agree with that. Therefore, I am calling for the library. I think it would just be a great idea to remove the books that are so full of vileness and crudity and crassness, vulgarity, rape, violence, you name it, sex, slavery. Move it to the adult section where the parents could have total control, because they don't now. When you're in the library, your children are down in the library, they're browsing. Do you remember browsing when you were a child? You may browse 45 minutes before you find a book. And unless you're going to have your mother hanging over your 15-year-old daughter's shoulder, that's a little bit awkward, isn't it? You cannot control what they do. And it's not a matter of checkout. You read a lot of books, parts of books, but that you never check out. So I would really like to call for that, what Ms. Carlson said, for total control by the parents of what the children do for minors. and these books do be removed. We have never called for banning or censorship, although in Virginia, 23 school districts have jettisoned books out of their libraries for those reasons. I was just reading a review of a book called Living Dead Girl by Elizabeth Scott. She's a sex slave to a man that forces her to call her daddy as he rapes her and abuses her, ties her to chairs, beats her, starves her. That's in our library, because I checked. A book called George by Alex Gino, that among the other things about this 14-year-old boy, masturbation, you name it, it tells children how to hide internet searches from their parents. That's a wholesome thing, isn't it? So there are a lot of books that I believe would be better served to be in the adult section, and if a parent wants to come and get those books for their kids, then they have the freedom to do that. But that protects the other children, like the ones in surrounding neighborhoods that come unaccompanied and spend time here just browsing, using the library with absolutely no supervision. So I would like to speak about that. The other thing is, I would like to just say that it's amazing to me when ideology supersedes care for our children. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Edie Reno?
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. My name's Edie Reno, and I agree with the young woman that a parent should be responsible for what their kids are looking at. And I'm going to read a letter from a bunch of parents in Idaho, Boise, Idaho, that removed graphic LGBT books despite opposition from principal, counselor, and other staff. First out, the two worst books, but more to come. Responding to the local outrage, school committee and superintendent intend to make removal process easier in the future. Too many parents think that it's impossible to win when it comes to removing horrible books in the children's library, but it really is doable. In Idaho, a half dozen outraged local parents on a local math-resistant team recently forced a high school to remove 2 pornographic LGBT books from the school library, and they plan to force more out soon. This was done even though the leftist principal, school counselor, and other staffers did their best to keep the books in. Centennial High School, located in liberal Boise, Idaho, is part of the West Ada School District, which includes several conservative suburbs. Earlier this year, after reading about the local parents, investigated and found several of them in Centennial High School library. They were very upset that their local high school was providing horrific material to the students. They decided to focus on the 2 worst, Gender Queer and This Book is Gay. Gender Queer is a revolting book about a young female who wants to be a male. It has depictions of her masturbating while pretending to be a male and imagining she has a penis that's involving oral sex. It includes the images of naked boys and kissing each other, which she dreams about. This Book is Gay is the next pornographic how-to book for teenagers on homosexual sexual practices and perversions. All the forms of gay and lesbian sex are endorsed and celebrated with graphic illustrations. So we took action. A conservative majority had just taken control of the West Ada School Board in November 2021. In addition, the superintendent was fairly conservative. Unfortunately, our team found they were not interested in doing anything about these books, at least at first. But during February and March 2022, our half dozen local Idaho math-resistant parents relentlessly pushed their message. They were allowed only very limited time to testify at meetings, but they emailed the school committee members, called them, and set up personal meetings. The school committee eventually agreed to order the high school to go through its removal process for 2 books. However, for any books to be reconsidered, a laborious process had to be followed. First, an informal committee of 7 members of the high school staff would vote on the book. If they failed to reject it, a 9-member formal...
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you, and parents have a right to see what their children are reading.
Susan Sissy?
First, I want to say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of you.
And what I have here, look at the second page, please. This was a tweet. This is hot off the press. December 16th, last Friday. Breaking, St. Tammany Parish District Attorney Warren Montgomery has ordered the library to create a separate area for sexual and erotic materials designated not for minors, which is what we want. Such materials will require photo ID and checkout. The letter from the district attorney is on the top, and I'd like for you to refer to the little red flag I have. If you'll go over there, you can read all of this later, but this is what we want here. We want the books moved. We want to protect our children from any kind of sexual indoctrination. It's just not right. And it says here under number 3, the material incites or appeals to or is designed to incite, and men have told me it's designed to arouse young boys, and they're very concerned about this. Or appeal to the prurient, shameful, or morbid interest of minors. And I've read so many of the books, and that's just what they do. This is not right for children. They need to be moved. The material is offensive to the average adult, applying contemporary community standards with respect to what is suitable for minors. The next one, the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. And I would say that applies to the 50-plus books that I have read. We're not being prudes here. The material that we found in the book, we found BDSM and this book is gay. We found unsafe medical practices suggested, and just animalistic, unsafe sex promoted to small children. And so I encourage the board to move the books, and I just want to say thank you to Del Shellstad and Colleen Favor for helping to appoint this board, and we have full faith in you, and we're praying for you, and it's all for the children. I believe children should have their innocence, so thank you very much.
Ed Sisti.
Madam Chair, I'd like to address the board tonight on a sleight of hand maneuver performed by a county commissioner. According to the Gillette News record on December 14th, 2022, Campbell County Commissioner Rusty Bell called for the removal of 2 library board members after claiming that they, as well as Commissioners Del Shellstad and Colleen Faber, are involved with mass resistance and stoking the ongoing controversies surrounding the Campbell County Public Library. However, the Facebook group post was not generated by mass resistance as stated in the article by Commissioner Bell. The Facebook post that Commissioner Shellstad and Commissioner Faber looked at was generated by Wyoming mass resistance. There is a huge difference. Wyoming mass resistance is a local grassroots group made up of many of the constituents of the Campbell County Commissioners, which gives both Commissioner Faber and Commissioner Shellstad the right to communicate with any members of Wyoming mass resistance, and by doing so are fulfilling their due diligence. Anything else would be dereliction of their duties. And to prove what I am saying is true, if you look at the article in the Gillette News record, they posted the snapshot submitted by Commissioner Bell confirming that it was not mass resistance, but Wyoming mass resistance that they looked at. How about that? Whether it was done intentionally or unintentionally, Commissioner Bell was able to pull off a sleight of hand to Campbell County, the very community that he is supposed to represent. He has tried to confuse the community into believing that the controversies at the Campbell County Public Library are something other than parental rights, grassroots, or community outrage. That, by the way, happens to be fueled by our Campbell County library officers, providing inappropriate sexual materials to our teens and children. The only workable solution that we have is to move the books, as many other communities are doing right now. The time is up. No more stonewalling with nonsense and confusion. It will not work.
Priscilla Hickson.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Hickson. And I'm here to tell you what has happened in the Idaho State Legislature. Idaho is a state close by us, so it's not, the people there are similar to ours. And in fact, that's where I went to college. And so like Boise is one of my old stomping grounds and some of the small towns around there. 2 years ago, in the state legislature, was the first state to keep biological males out of female sports. Then they were also, in that year, they had outlawed, they require all public documents to reflect biological sex. So this year, they've tried to do 2 new ones. One of them was to ban chemical and surgical sex changes for minors. It passed the House. It was killed in the Senate. And as a side, I was looking up statistics and studies on transsexual situations, and these are studies that are published by the NIH and the CDC and whoever, and I have them at home if anybody wants to access them. Trans people, young people, they are 41% higher than attempted suicide, whereas the normal population is 4.6%. So people that do this have a higher rate of suicide. They have a 3 times higher all-cause mortality than the U.S. population in general. When you go to the hormone therapy, the people that go through hormone therapy have polycystic ovarian syndrome, higher liver cancer, higher ovarian cancer, higher cardiovascular disease, higher gallbladder disease. Johns Hopkins, which you may have heard of, that's a big fancy hospital back east. They were the first U.S. hospital to get on the bandwagon for transgender surgical changes in the 1960s, but they have now discontinued it because they have found that it ends up with poor mental health outcomes. The people that did that were 5 times more likely to try suicide and 19 times more likely to succeed at their suicide. So that would be kind of behind why they want to ban these chemical and surgical for minors. This year they tried to repeal the obscenity law exemption for schools and libraries, which our state has that same exemption. It passed the House, was killed in the Senate. It was originally, and I suppose it's true here, that was meant for schools and libraries to access artwork, like Michelangelo's Naked Ladies and all those people back there. But those would not be, the obscenity laws would not apply to them, so they would still be able to be using that. Now these conservative legislatures that worked very, very hard to get these bills passed that failed were very, very upset. So they were able to affect the state budget. Okay, I'll just take 30 more seconds. Anyhow, they were able to remove $4 million from the state library fund, so that's how they dealt with it.
Thank you. Patty Munger.
Madam Chair, Library Board, thank you for the opportunity to share some of my feelings. First, I would like to say thank you for your diligence to make a safe environment for all in the library. I think rating the books for content is a great idea. This should aid patrons in making correct book choices and be a win-win for everyone. I support having books put in the proper locations so a minor would not unknowingly choose one that is not suitable for their age. And I agree that having parents check out books for their children when the content may be too mature for some is a workable option. But materials that contain pornography should have no place in our library. Finally, my family as longtime Campbell County residents, we have used the library and participated in some of the programs offered over the years with great success. I brought my children to Storytime when they were young, and I do not recall ever having any concerns that there would be books with sexually explicit material within their reach. It was never an issue, and I would like to have that same reassurance not only for my grandchildren, but for all of the patrons who use the library. May your good efforts be multiplied as you go forward. Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Dean Gonhoff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all of you for giving us this opportunity to come before you. A group of concerned citizens and I got involved with the library about 18 months ago. It started over sexually explicit books for children, Gay Pride Month, and having a transvestite do a magic show for children. When I heard about the magic show, we formed a peaceful protest in front of the library in opposition. Within a few days after the protest, Sarah Burlingame was brought to Gillette from Cheyenne and met at Pizza Corello's with 40 people from the LGBT community to form their strategy. The following night, a local church was vandalized. The next week, the perpetrator met with the pastor of the vandalized church and was shocked to find out the church had nothing to do with the protest. Then last month, November 19th, a man went into a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs and killed 5 people. At our library board meeting last month, many brought up this shooting and said that somehow our group was to blame for it. This group that only wants questionable books moved to a parent's guidance section is somehow responsible. The following week, Thanksgiving Day, the LGBT community of Colorado Springs vandalized Focus on the Family's office in that city. 2 days later, we find out that the shooter is non-binary, not a hater of LGBT per se, but definitely a troubled person. Then, this past Saturday, I was listening to a radio interview with Pastor Armando Hazar of Chula Vista, California. He said he spoke out opposing having a drag queen story hour at the local library. At 3 a.m. the following Sunday morning, surveillance cameras showed 2 people getting out of their car and painting satanic symbols on the church. I have had anonymous letters in my mailbox and political signs trampled. I asked my neighbor who is a supporter of the LGBT community, and he admitted to it. I don't know if the LGBT group is a hate group, but they definitely have all the earmarks for it. At our November meeting, someone from the LGBT community said they feel that they have a target on their back. Try putting down the can of paint.
Thank you for letting me speak. And Merry Christmas. I'd like to address the Southern Poverty Law Center as a credible source of hate groups. This group has been mentioned by several people, including a library board member. The Southern Poverty Law Center was founded in 1971 by Morris Dees to combat the influence of the KKK. Since then, they've listed as many as 1,800 groups as hate groups. These groups include Focus on the Family, whose signs were vandalized this year in Colorado Springs after the nightclub shooting. The Family Research Council, whose lobby was shot up by a gunman in 2012. The gunman read on the Southern Poverty Law Center website that they were anti-gay. Our Kennedy Ministries and Dr. Ben Carson for their stand on traditional marriage and homosexuality. These are not fringe groups, but mainstream Christian ministries. They've also been sued multiple times for defamation and paid out millions of dollars to groups for falsely labeling them hate groups. Most notably, the Quilliam Foundation, a liberal Islamic reform group that they paid $3.375 million. In addition, they've had many internal scandals, including allegations of mistreatment, sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and racism. In March of 2019, the Southern Poverty Law Center fired the founder, Mr. Dees, for undisclosed reasons and removed his bio from their website. The Southern Poverty Law Center has become nothing more than a fundraising money machine with an endowment of more than $300 million. I don't think the Southern Poverty Law Center can be cited as a credible source for hate groups with their history and record, and I do not believe Mass Resistance is a hate group. One more thing I'd like to add is that 2 groups were moved by the previous board before you all were up there, after they were appealed. No lawsuits were filed, so I do not understand what the problem is to move these other disputed books to the same area, graphic novels. What is the problem?
Sherry Lewis.
Before I begin, there's been a request from some of us in the back that as each board member makes a comment, they speak into a microphone. Okay. Chairperson Bear and the library board and Terry. My name is Sherry Lowell. To those of you in this community and cohorts from California and elsewhere, your efforts to destroy the public basis of our public libraries is not truly protecting our precious children or yours. It is muzzling and degrading children and adults in our community, living lives that you do not understand. The public library is a safe place for all our citizens to search out and learn about science, world's religions, drug addiction, child and adult physical and mental abuse, and health issues persons may be facing. Your stated right to defend children stops in your own homes. You have no right to force your religion, your parenting techniques, or any other things upon me or anyone else in this community by rewriting the current library collection policy. Shame on Mass Resistance mouthpiece Arthur S. for calling one of our long-serving and responsible county commissioners a degrading name over and over on a recent radio broadcast, especially after he made sure he had fair treatment and proper pronunciation of his name. Shame, blame, and defame was an accusation Arthur leveled against named individuals in Gillette. From California, he undermined citizen advocacy, which represents many more people in this community than he gives credit for. Think carefully, all of you here today, or listening to this later. Your rights to read what is appropriate for you and your family are truly threatened by a group that masks its true intent by saying we are protecting children. Speak up, voice your support for public libraries for all people, even adults, and what they are allowed to read could be restricted in light.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hannah? I can't read the last name. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the curation of the library. So we've heard a lot of information here tonight about how the public thinks that there is pornographic or perverse material in the library. And I have to say that I would wholly disagree with this because we just spent 20 minutes talking about the education, training, and vetting that every librarian goes through to work here. And I trust our librarians, and no librarian worth their salt would be putting pornographic material in the children's section. So I trust our librarians to know that they have curated a wonderful educational materials for us here at the public library that should be accessible to everyone. I would also like to say there's been a lot of talk about research tonight, and I have a master's degree in science education with a certification in science research. And I wrote my master's thesis on sex education. So I would like everyone to know that sex education for the proper development and healthy well-being of our children, sex education is supposed to start at a young age. Right? And you are supposed to have these educational materials ready for them. And I trust that our librarians, right, are properly vetting that and are not going to be putting pornographic material in the children's section, so I don't understand why it's an issue. Additionally, what people have been referring to as perverse material is actually LGBTQ-friendly material that provides education and support for the LGBTQ members of our community. And not only them, but education and support for our non-LGBTQ members of the community. These books are not going to turn children gay. They are not going to give children perversions. What they do is that providing this type of educational material decreases morbidity and mortality across all children, not just the LGBTQ community. It increases understanding and acceptance in our community, and it also increases educational outcomes. Just by having this material in our community, it betters the entire population, not just the people that it's targeted towards, but everyone as well, right? Because it's there for the purpose of education. And that is what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mandy Stewart?
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here to listen to us. I like being on this side of the table. So I just want to say a couple things. I support your book rating system. I still liken it to the movie rating system. My 15-year-old asked me last night, could you go see a certain movie? I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because it's rated R. He said, well, can't I still get in? I said, no, you can't. You're 15, you're not 17. And that's on me as a parent to take him if I want to take him or if I don't. That's my choice. But not his. He doesn't need to go see it. Apparently there's inappropriate something in there, and that they're giving the parents that choice to take them. I feel like the book rating system is the same way. It can give parents a guide. They can let their kids read it or not. I think moving books is a fantastic idea. I don't think it's censorship at all. If there's tons of books in the teen section that I've read as an adult. If I wanted to go read those books now, I would have to go down to the teen section or ask someone where they were and have them find them. That's not called censorship. So why is moving these books to another area considered censorship? They're still available to the kids. And as we heard Darcy say at the commissioners meeting, she can take them to these books if they need to. So I support those. I also support you leading the ALA. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Kevin Bennett?
You can just scan the QR code and it'll get you right to the YouTube video. You haven't got to type anything in. It's a very worthwhile video, and sorry, I don't have the mic yet. I'll get it in a second. What that's to is a video called "Deception Was My Job" by Yuri Bezmenov, who's an ex-KGB defector. And he left the KGB because he loved the people that he was lying to, and the way he lied was subversively over generations. There was a plan, an 18-year plan that the Soviets used to subvert populations. And he lines out in that documentary with Edward G. Griffin, which came out coincidentally in 1984, how this is done, and it's like he's looking at the modern day. And the way it's done is by insinuating into positions of power people who are ostensibly a conservative representative of the community, but who in fact are acting as subversives to undermine that community, specifically through deception. So what you'll see is deceptive language that portends to be something that's inclusive, etc., when in reality there is an agenda at play here. And we've seen that with the ALA, and we've seen that with these books. And the WLA is a paired organization of the ALA. I took Chuck Butler's advice as I was listening today, and I looked up what they have to say on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it says that they commit to serve all members and constituents regardless of the many intersecting dominant and marginalized identities we occupy, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender identity, which is a fiction, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, religion, ability, language, age, sex, national origin, and size. And now the next move is to change age to be something you can identify as, so a 10-year-old could identify as a 30-year-old if they want. What this does is it facilitates pedophilia. Now, the young lady who spoke before me spoke about sexual materials being made available for younger individuals. Recently, there was a private school on the East Coast where a gay gentleman was giving out butt plugs to elementary schoolers. Now, I saw something coming here in Gillette a year and a half ago as regards the transvestite magician.
I didn't know that they were going to be here. I just knew that that's where we'd end up. And this is the same thing. You keep opening the door wider and wider, more things are going to come through. So, Darcy, I think you've got the best intentions when you talk about having a voice with the WLA, but you've got to understand they're a subsidiary that has an agenda which couches its agenda in deliberate deception. And that deception is designed to ideologically subvert our population. And the way they do it is the educational courses you were speaking about. We spoke about them for 20 minutes. There's library personnel here. I've heard that when they heard these books were given to children, that was just sex education. I presented a book called Sex Plus, which is a look at sexual positivity for teenagers. It talks about using electricity on the nipples during heterosexual sex. We don't want that either. And we're not saying ban the books. All we're saying is put them in the adult section of the library and the parents can have the choice. So these things are very important because the brainwashing is to the extent that you have guys like Rusty Bell who use the color of law to deceive people, and that's a problem. So thank you, board. God bless you.
Thank you, Tony. Ebert?
First of all, thank you, Chairman Baer and library board members, for giving the time to visit with you this morning, or this evening, a cold evening, no less. My name is Dave Eberts. It has been stated many times in this and other public forums, the purpose of the library is to serve a diverse citizenry in Campbell County. In doing so, our professional library staff is tasked with compiling a diverse collection. We have heard from our library staff about how they do that. I think they are very competent. They are very professional. As a patron of this diversity, it generally includes material I find objectionable. I have to admit, as I walk in a library, which I do fairly often, as I walk by the kiosk, almost always I find a book I find to be offensive. One guy was recently assessed $1.5 billion. His book was on the kiosk. I find that to be objectionable, but as a library staff, someone decided someone in this community wanted to read that book, and they had that right to read that. We hear phrases like family values, community standards, and safety of children. These are thinly coded references to anti-LGBTQ values, and also anti-cultural diversity agendas. Strongly held religious and cultural beliefs are important to our identities. A person has a right to a belief. That belief does not give that person the right to censor or judge another person's religious persuasion, their cultural belief, or self-identity, especially when patently incorrect facts and stereotypes are used as a basis for those judgments. This brings us to mass resistance. Some of us heard the radio broadcast on Saturday, and as Ms. Bonhoff pointed out, Southern Poverty Law Center has found mass resistance, I'm talking about the national group here, as a hate group. Some of you have declared you do not know much about mass resistance. With a visit to their website, and again, this is the national one, not the local one, you will find that they know very much about you. With the visit, they think you are wonderful. They love you. They write articles about you. There's pictures of you. Just a minute. Thank you.
Your time is up.
I think that since you are their poster child, you should know something about them.
Thank you. Deb Proctor?
Once again, I'm here to remind you that I think it's most important that the public library serves all the citizens of Campbell County. I think our library staff, our director, everybody does a wonderful job, and I certainly appreciate the appreciation that was shown to them over time. And I do have one concern about the actions of the library board in the recent month, and that is removing the support for the Wyoming Library Association for members of the staff. I'm a lifetime member of the Wyoming Library Association. It helped me very much with a lot of trainings, interactions with other people. And when I look and I found out that the county commissioners, I think, have a budget for $52,000 to belong to their state and maybe national organization. The county assessor, I think his numbers were about $10,000, the sheriff's office $23,000, that they're allowed to be an active part supported by the taxpayers of Campbell County. I don't think that's fair employment to not allow the Campbell County Library staff to be supported in memberships for the Wyoming Library Association, which is a professional organization which has helped many of us that were in the profession to be better at our jobs. And so I certainly hope that in your reconsideration, you understand that there's a problem with equity for county employees, and that the WLA has done a lot of good for Campbell County Library. Sage, I also was a little surprised that you wondered about how Campbell County Library was honored. Campbell County Library has been an institution that's been well respected forever for its services, for its activities, whether it's story hour or adults, for the way that they worked to approve and purchase things that our county citizens, all our county citizens, have requested. It's an awesome institution. I hope at some point soon some of this controversy disappears and we can go back to honoring a great institution of Campbell County. Thank you.
Sherry England.
Good evening, Chairperson, I'm sorry, and committee members. I just want to say that it seems like there are a handful of people, and if you're Wyoming Mass Resistance or National Mass Resistance, you seem to still be headed up by Arthur Shaper, who is a white supremacist. I find that pretty overwhelmingly full of hate and discontent, and you can feel that in speeches, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for all of us who have to put up with that. I do think you already have a solution with your collection policy. You stated that there is a thing called BookLove, Lookbook, booklook.com, something like that, that is already rating the books, which has a more conservative approach that I think a lot of people would like. And then with the Aspen, the card catalog with rating that system, I think that would be a good approach, and then you wouldn't have to change things. And then, because I think the other perception of that is if you go ahead and change the collection policy, you're trying to keep books out that aren't conservative. And I think then you aren't serving the entire community. And I do call it's you all are protecting the children. I find that ridiculous when you aren't including all of us want to do that. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, I think you have a problem with pornographic, sexualized, all those definitions. Conservative may have one definition, somebody else may have another, and if you're going by just one, you're not listening to your entire community. But I think if you have that BookLook, Aspen, I think that's a great solution. I do want to say that I see you're going to an executive session on the looking at evaluating the director. I think you should have read the letter saying that she was a wonderful person and did a wonderful job. When you're going into executive session, I would definitely have that letter in hand. That's what we used to do when we're evaluating people, but I imagine you already do that, sorry. Anyway, so I would hope that those people that are throwing around hate and discontent and followers of Arthur Shaper, and I see you all clapping. Please just tone it down and let's just discuss this a little subtle. I'd be willing to talk to you. Thank you.
Mark Judick.
Thank you, Mark Judick. 2 weeks ago, after the regular Campbell County Commission meeting, in a stated attempt to put to rest some of the library controversy, the commission hosted a very good discussion about the library controversy. In Director Terry Leslie's remarks, she stated that, and I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing, Ms. Leslie, that before everything started a year and a half ago, there was no problem. Of course, Ms. Leslie had no problem with the library's collection policy. Many of us in the community became aware of a problem when we learned that the library's youth section contains books, contains that, for instance, instructed handies and blowies. Others seek to normalize pedophilia. I would not let my adolescent grandson wander the library alone. That was a problem, still is a problem. Mr. Anderson, I was also going to comment on the Southern Poverty Law Center, which many reasonable people would call a hate group. Cheryl Baumhaus did much better in her remarks than I planned to. So I will just echo her sentiments. In the recent, in Saturday's News Record story, Rusty Bell questioned whether or not Sage Bear had an agenda. I believe Ms. Bear does have an agenda, and I believe her agenda is to make the library a safer place for our children. Thank you.
Remy?
Today I'd like to talk about respect. Since some members of this board have stated they feel they have not been given the respect they deserve. Some say respect is something you have to earn, and I think that's half true. I believe everybody should be afforded a baseline level of respect solely because they are a fellow inhabitant of this earth. Your actions determine whether or not that level of respect should go up or down. And the actions this board has taken over the past few months make it easy for me to see why citizens of the community and staff of the library may not have much respect left to give. You have belittled their education and devotion to serving this community by spreading the lie that the library is involved in a nefarious plot of abuse and indoctrination. And you have undermined their profession by forcing the separation from the American Library Association and the Wyoming Library Association. Now you seek to further destabilize the library by implementing subjective metrics into the collection development policy. Great care was taken when writing this policy to ensure that the materials in this library are chosen and maintained objectively, not based on the agenda and opinions of any one religion or group. As a concerned citizen and library patron, I'd like to know when this board is going to drop the culture war, stop taking away from the library, and start doing the job they're supposed to be doing, like supporting the staff and ensuring the smooth operation of this library. Eventually, this board will need to change course, or at some point, this community may not have much of a library left. A significant step forward toward mending bridges that are barely holding on would be to undo the decision to separate from the ALA and WLA, because with the support of these organizations, this community has built one of the most highly regarded libraries with one of the best developed and best maintained collections in the state. And I would very much like to keep it that way.
Thank you. Bennett?
Marriage is one of the factors in undermining social stability, which relates to Yuri Brezmanov's disclosure of the KGB's agenda. Scientists, psychologists, and biologists have begun to clarify the social and psychological effects of early sexualization and how pornography produces its powerful negative effects on children, society, parents, and family, and let's face it, our future as a country. Adults need to provide an invaluable shield against early sexualization of children and allow room for a healthy sexuality to unfold in a safe, neutral, and socially supported way. In an over-sexualized culture with a longer pre-marriage period, children need the capacity for abstinence if their sexuality is to be channeled into stable marriage, procreation, and healthy family life for their children. Strong families remain the best defense against the negative effects of any early sexualization of children. Additionally, the fundamental role of government, including the courts, is to protect innocent citizens, most especially children and adolescents, and to protect the sound functioning of the basic institutions of family, church, school, marketplace, and government. They are all interdependent. Early sexual exposure, arousal, pornography, etc. clearly undermines both marriage and the family and has a host of ill effects. It's time for government to reassess its laissez-faire attitude toward the proliferation of pornography, especially when it comes to minors. Additionally, I don't think Arthur Shaper's a racist, and I know I'm not a racist, and I don't appreciate being called that. And I think Rusty Bell was just kicking over the garbage can on his way out of office. Thank you.
Susan Bennett.
Merry Christmas, what a wonderful time of year. Okay, the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, has led in protecting children from exposure to harmful content. What the FCC has recognized, and I'm sure they're covering all people, and they've recognized that children are harmed by content that is indecent and profane, even when it doesn't meet the most extreme definition of obscenity. Children should be protected from indecent content. We're talking about children, not adults right now, even though the FCC included them all. The FCC regulates the airwaves during specific hours. Why? Because of a reasonable assumption that children might be present during those times. Our library contains books that meet the definition of indecent content, despite the fact that we know children are present. And they have limited shelving, too, where they should be picking the most quality works. Some argue that it violates a child's freedom of speech to regulate content standards in the library. We know it does not. The laws that allow for regulation of content on airwaves have withstood the First Amendment challenges, as well as the SIPA regulations. There is much law to cite from the Supreme Court concerning these matters. ALA versus USA is a good place to start. We know that books can be removed or relocated from libraries for pervasively vulgar, indecent, and profane content. It is not a child's right to access developmentally inappropriate, possibly harmful material. It is not a matter of free speech, which we all love and defend. To implement standards that protect children from potentially harmful content in our public libraries is necessary. We can use basic FCC standards to help us with regulating materials. The average book should have an average interest, not depict or describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive manner, and contain serious literary, artistic, or scientific value, or else be available by special request only. I think our library administration needs to defend those qualities when a book is contested. And if any portion of a book in question is read aloud at a board meeting that is being broadcast publicly, and in seconds the mic is cut off, we know it does not. Our children are exposed to at seasons of their life can do the tipping point in a positive or negative way. You all have that study in front of you. Thank you.
First of all, would like to apologize to the members of the LGBTQ community which are in attendance today for having to listen to this insulting misinformation that has been presented by many of the speakers during public comment. So diversity, inclusion, equity are values that the ALA and the WLA espouse. Well, you might find it interesting that the association which the commissioners also belong to also have those as values. Those are actually not left-wing words. Those are what most communities espouse to now. Last night I had the great pleasure to listen to Craig Johnson along with 125 plus people. And Deb Proctor asked him what he thought about libraries. And his answer was that back east, he's often asked, what superpower did Walt Longmire have? And his answer is that Walt reads and remembers everything. The other thing is, he said, you can judge the strength of a community by its libraries. And you can judge the library by the strength of its librarians. And we are very, very fortunate to have a wonderful community, a wonderful library, and an awesome library director. Chuck,
the National Sexual Exploitation website is a .org, and in high school, as a junior high teacher, I was taught the CRAP test, and this does, even though it's got the word national in it, it does not have any authority. That's the A in CRAP. So we've got to be careful which websites we access. I also would like to ask, have any of you guys been to a conference, a professional conference? Any of you? And was it valuable? You were the one voting to go back with WLA, which I appreciate. Well, I've been to Science, National Association of Science Teachers meetings, and they are amazing, overwhelming, and there are so many different classes and programs you can go to, and I come back with a binder like this of new information that I take back to my classroom. So it really is a major, major thing that they need to be able to have access to. Thank you. And happy holidays.
I'm Helen Haven. Thank you for your time. For the board members, this has been a problem for a long time, even before 18 months ago. I know some parents won't bring their kids here anymore. I know one that complained about some material that she came across, and she wasn't told about the process to go through. They just said if you didn't like it, you didn't have to check it out. There happens to be a book called Queer There and Everywhere, and it's also an e-book. How are you going to maintain a parental control or monitoring that? It's in the young adult teen room. History sure has changed. I thought history was about what we've accomplished, such as Abraham Lincoln. What did he accomplish? Instead, this book is about lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer individuals. There's other communities and states that are making a change. They are moving the books. They are doing something about it. In fact, homeschooling has grown 60% in the past decade. Mississippi parents forced middle school principal to pull graphic pornographic books from library after months of foot dragging by school board. Books included descriptions of anal, rape of a child, bloody suicide, and other horrible scenes. After months of foot dragging by their school board, a group of mass-resistant parents in Madison County, Mississippi, forced the middle school principal to take action on extreme pornography books in the school library. Led by a local mother, parents throughout the community rallied against this outrage. Several books were immediately removed from circulation pending a full review, and the principal drastically changed the policy on handling book challenges by parents. The books, which are in schools throughout the school or country, sickened many parents. They include descriptions of anal rape of a child, bloody suicide, children masturbating, a mother being raped, and other disturbing scenes. Looking through these books is so dark, so upsetting. It's the last thing one would want any child to be reading. How can these books be there? And yes, I agree, it's up to the parents, and I think they need to be moved, or the parents need to take responsibility. If it's they want to teach their children how to have sex, that's their privilege.
Thank you, Helen.
Hi, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk. I really appreciate it. I grew up here in Gillette with a conservative family. I went to the library a lot as a kid, and I've loved this place ever since I was a toddler. My pronouns are they, them. And having grown up in a conservative home, I didn't have a lot of exposure to knowledge about LGBTQ topics. I would say that that lack of knowledge didn't make me safe, it just made me confused and fearful. I can sense a lot of fear in this room. Most of it is fear of the other. I don't think the other's scary. I would venture to say that many who oppose the other actually have some other within themselves. The main talking point has been protecting children. However, we heard a statistic earlier today that trans people have a 3 times higher rate of suicide than people who are not trans. And looking on the Trevor Project, there's actually a factor that changes that. Pardon me. That factor is community support. So it says let's see. Sorry. LGBTQ young adults who report high levels of parental rejection are 8 times more likely to report attempting suicide and 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression. It's not confiscation of knowledge that will keep these kids safe. It is helping accrue this knowledge and helping them understand who they are. Also, I would like to point out, why are only LGBTQ books being targeted? Why not other books with objectionable content like rape, sex, slavery, erotica, and other topics also appearing in, say, romance novels, dictionaries, encyclopedias, or the Bible? Books cited, these books that are cited as being harmful to children, they often didn't appear in the children's section. I've heard the words small children, little children many times tonight, but most of these books appeared in the teen section, and that is an appropriate age to begin exploring that part of oneself. The library is a sanctuary of knowledge, and fear doesn't have a place here. My life deserves to be on the shelf every bit as much as yours does. And I hope that we can all come together and instill knowledge rather than fear. Thank you.
18 months. Wow. I want to thank Charlie and Terry. You've been in here for the long haul. 18 months, that's a long time. And the rest of you board members, you dove head first into the deep end, and you're still fighting, and you're public servants. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, regardless of whether we agree or we disagree. You're stepping forward and doing something, and I just want to say thank you. Who would have thought 18 months ago that Gillette, Wyoming, Wright, Wyoming, Campbell County, Wyoming would be at the forefront of what's sweeping across our nation? But everything that's being said here, it's playing out all across the nation. And who would have thought that? But 18 months, it's time to make some decisions and move on. I thank all the people who continue to come every time, whether it's the county commissioners meeting, whether it's the board meetings. We all have something worthwhile to say. And one of the things that I had so many things I could have said, I didn't write any of them down, but what really keeps coming across my mind is something that I read, I think it probably was in the article in the newspaper, regarding Rusty Bell. And that is that, the silent majority is speaking out now, or the vocal minority. But in reality, the minority is usually vocal because they have to stand up for what they believe in. The majority tends to be silent. They don't have to fight for what they believe in. And what really has happened here is the status quo has changed. Nobody likes the status quo changing. And one of the thoughts that went through my mind is Some of you have little children, or we have little grandchildren, and if they're busily writing on the wall and they're coloring and they're having such a great time, and that's the status quo for whatever period of time it's been, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, mom or dad comes in and says, that cannot be. Well, some accept it, and others have tantrums. But the status quo has to change. And what's happened here is, in my opinion, obviously each one of us has our own opinions, but sometimes that silent majority finds their voice. In the last 18 months, what used to be the silent majority is not silent anymore, and it's creating havoc in the status quo. Look across the nation.
Thank you, Patty. Avery?
Hi, it's everyone's favorite, very opinionated 16-year-old girl. I was born and raised in Gillette. All 16 years of my life I've spent here in this town. I've attended the schools, I've been to nearly every store and restaurant, and I spend my time just living here, soaking it all in. I come from a family full of Wyomingites. My family are ranchers, sheep herders, and beet farmers. They're homesteaders, pioneers, and innovators. And I was born to an FFA dad and a 4-H mom. I'm Wyoming through and through, and yet many in this audience and on the library board have made it clear that my way of life, my very being, does not reflect upon the state and community I love so dearly. Because despite all these facts about myself and my family, I'm pretty far away from what your interpretation of what our community standards should reflect. I support free speech and freedom of expression. I think that libraries should be a safe space for anyone to explore their identity, gay, straight, or in between. I believe that shielding kids and teenagers from their right to know about the world and themselves is dangerous and ignorant. When I was 10 years old, my dad suddenly died in a climbing accident. It crushed me. I had no idea what to do with my life, and at 10 years old, I felt like it had already ended. Many on this board have made it clear, through their association with mass resistance, that they believe kids like me, who've experienced not child-appropriate hardships, should not be represented in life or literature, that we should be erased. I was bullied in middle school so badly I purposely gave myself bloody noses just to get out of the classrooms where it was happening. And yet, this board keeps creating policy to show me that they do not believe that kids like me should be represented in literature. Throughout my entire life, I've struggled with mental health. I've suffered debilitating panic attacks in school restrooms. I could barely handle crowded spaces, lest I suffer another. And yet, this library board does not think kids like me should be represented in literature. Finally, I'm in a constant state of limbo with my identity. I don't always know who I am or what I should be. But I definitely know I'm not anyone's idea of a perfect child in a traditional family. Mass resistance does not believe that kids like me, with a single mom, should not be represented in literature. Why does my life and the hundreds of other students in Kimball County not reflect these community standards? Kids and teenagers aren't perfect little angels who are innocent. We're messy and emotional, and sometimes we go through traumatic experiences, more than one. These books aren't causing that. Living on this planet we call Earth is. And why do you think that you have the right to deprive us from literature where we can truly be seen and see ourselves? Thank you.
Jody Sorensen.
Thank you, board, for giving me the chance to speak. Hate starts with what you hear. It starts with biased attitudes, insensitive remarks, a fear of differences, and the acceptance of misinformation and negative stereotypes. It breeds on fear and manufactures ignorance. If left unchecked, if not stopped, hate grows into name-calling, social avoidance, ridicule, bullying, and slurs. It turns into biased and belittling jokes and eventually prejudice and dehumanization. If hate isn't stopped, if people don't take a stand against hate, it leads to discrimination, to segregation, to corruption. If hate isn't stopped, if leaders don't take a stand against it, then hate can lead to vandalism, to desecration, to threats, and to violence. Hate has an antidote, though, and it's love. Love is divine. It's godly. Love heals, it mends fences, and creates endless possibilities by uniting a community. That is why it's time for members of the library board, the county commissioners, and other leaders in our community to take a stand against hate, to shut it down. Because for 18 months, whether it's the minority or majority members of our community have repeatedly called librarians, our LGBTQ community, or just people they don't like, pedophiles, groomers, peddlers of pornography. This rhetoric is hateful. It's not helpful. It's destructive, and it's dividing our community. It's not a way to make our children, library, or community better. We have a moral responsibility to stop hate where it starts, with what we hear and start to focus on what really matters. Love. Love that is patient and kind, that is not arrogant or rude, that does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love that bears all things, believes all things, and endures all things. Thank you.
Ben Decker?
Ben and go.
I think we're done. That's all of public comment. Any board member comments? We can't adjourn yet. We have to do executive session, right? Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to go into an executive session for a personnel matter that is listed on our agenda.
Oh, I second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?